It's Sam. If you have this video, it is because you've agreed to the 30-day Just Say Yes to Sex challenge. And you should already have some information about all of the benefits of having sex, and specifically having sex with your partner. This video is going to outline some guidelines or some etiquette for your 30-day challenge. I started out with a lot of guidelines. I just started documenting all the rules that Patty and I have in our sex life. Things like no funk on your junk and orgasms for everybody. But it turns out these aren't great rules that apply to everybody the more I learn about sex and sexuality and how that all works. For example, what I call funk, my girlfriend calls musk, and it turns her on like nobody's business. And it turns out orgasms aren't always the goal for all couples. Sometimes it's just pleasure. So I've narrowed it down to 4 rules, and I'm calling it the Playground PACT. And PACT is an acronym, P-A-C-T. But before we start into the rules, I think we have to define sex, because sex is defined differently by different people. And I want to use a very expanded and what I consider to be an enlightened definition of sex. And it's the one that was in the Height Report. It's old. It's from 1976, from the chapter called Redefining Sex. But I think this is the most inclusive definition I've heard and the most appropriate for this challenge. So it says, sex is intimate physical contact for pleasure, to share pleasure with another person or just alone. But in this instance, it's going to be with another person. You can have sex to orgasm or not to orgasm, genital sex, or just physical intimacy. Whatever seems right to you. There's never a reason to think the goal must be intercourse, and to try to make what you feel fit into that context. There's no standard of sexual performance out there against which you must measure yourself. You aren't ruled by hormones or biology. You're free to explore and discover your own sexuality, to learn or unlearn anything you want, and to make physical relations with other people of either sex anything you like. So that's our definition of sex during our challenge, and now we'll move on to the guidelines. P. It stands for the Platinum Rule. So you may have heard of the Golden Rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But with regards to sex, this is a pretty big mistake. What you really want is to treat your partner the way they want to be treated. Because with regards to sex, it turns out scientific research has proven that there are no innate sexual turn-ons or turn-offs, meaning we aren't born with these sexual turn-ons and turn-offs. There are things that are cues for us, but we learn and unlearn what's sexually relevant in our lives. And we also go through a process usually it's during adolescence, that's similar to imprinting. So my mom was born in April, and one year her birthday was on Easter, and her parents gave her a baby duck. And they had it in the house, and my grandma got out the vacuum cleaner, and this duck went crazy. It was quacking and waddling all around. She vacuumed, and the duck followed her in the vacuum all through the house as she vacuumed. And then when my grandma was trying to put it back into the closet, the vacuum, the duck had a fit. And so she opened the door, and the duck snuggled up to that vacuum and slept with that vacuum every night. And every time they got the vacuum out, he would follow the little vacuum around. So somehow that duck, when it was born, imprinted on that vacuum cleaner. Basically, it thought it was its mother. Well, why am I telling you this story? Because that's kind of how sex works. When we learn about sex and what we think is sexy or not sexy, it has to do with the time period in our lives and what has happened during that time. So you could honestly think that anything is sexy. And I'll give you an example of myself. I get really aroused when I'm reading very boring stale textbook-like literature. And I always thought it was weird, but I guess I never really thought about it until I started reading about how we learn about sex. And now it sort of makes sense, because when I was in high school, and that was probably my first real sexual kind of environment where I was being aroused and then, being touched and all that stuff, we would come home from school and we'd be studying, and we really would study for a while, but then we would start to fool around. So I guess that's how I was imprinted with a textbook fetish. So why am I telling you all this? So the reason I'm telling you it is because anything could turn your partner on. Anything. And anything could turn them off, because we learn that the same way. So when it comes to the platinum rule, you have to learn what your partner likes and what they don't like. And I'm going to keep repeating this phrase, but during this whole challenge, I want you to be honest, brave, gentle, without shame or judgment of yourself and of your partner. So the platinum rule: treat others the way they want to be treated, and you cannot assume that something turns them on or off because you saw it in a porno or because your old girlfriend liked it. You really have to learn each partner as their own individual self. Okay, that's P, platinum rule. Number 2 is the altruistic ask and agree. Altruistic just means you do this with the spirit of giving. So when you are asking for sex, you're asking to give pleasure, not to get pleasure. You're asking to engage in this act with your partner for your relationship and for your partner's pleasure, not for your own pleasure. And on the same side, on the other side of that coin, but with the same spirit, when you agree to have sex, you're agreeing to have your partner pleasure you. You're agreeing to give this gift to your partner and your relationship. It's not a sacrifice. You're choosing, you're making a decision, a beautiful decision to invest in your relationship and the sexual health of your relationship and in your partner. And it's very intimate. It will create connection. That's what you're saying yes to. That's what you are selflessly agreeing to. I also want to say that sex shouldn't be used as a currency. So in some of my previous experiments with the 30-day just say yes to sex, some people have gone into it like, oh, I'm going to put out for 30 days, which means my partner is going to do whatever I want them to do. And that isn't what we're doing here. This isn't a tisk for a task. This is, we're both deciding to have sex together whenever either one of us wants to, and that is for the goodness of each other and for our relationship. It's not tied to any other things that are happening in your relationship. It is really just to build intimacy and connection with your partner. So that's the altruistic ask and agree. Oh, the other thing that goes with this. If you are asking, you need to be very clear that you're asking. So it's interesting, the 5 love languages in this asking thing I'm about to talk about are similar in that when you have a love language, you usually try to speak that love language to your partner. And they may or may not understand that as love because they have their own way of feeling love and giving love. So in that same way, when you are initiating sex, you may do certain things that you believe translate to initiating sex. Like I might snuggle up to Patty and he might think that's cute, but he might not think I'm trying to initiate sex. Or he might grab my boob and I might be like, that's kind of annoying, but that might be his initiation to sex. So while you're doing this challenge, I think you can still try to initiate sex however you initiate sex, but then say the words like, I am altruistically asking to pleasure you. after you've tried to initiate. And that will also give your partner cues about how you initiate, which will give them cues about how you like for them to initiate potentially, but also there's no question if you're asking. Okay, so altruistic, ask and agree. So that's PA, and now the C, which you can probably guess what that's going to be, but I have a cute little twist on it, which is communicate. That's funny, right? So communicate. Obviously, once you learn as you're learning the likes and the dislikes of your partner, as you're asking and agreeing and learning that, there's also just, you have to communicate. And you can do this verbally. You can also do this non-verbally. But here's what I would say about communicating. When you're expressing your likes, I'd be very specific. And you can do this gently, and you can do it during sex. You can do it by saying, oh, baby, that feels so good. Or you can squeeze their arm, or you can have you can breathe in a different way or moan to tell them what you like. You can also say, oh, I love that. You can also do it before sex and or after sex by saying, oh, when you did that one thing, I really loved that. Or even before sex, like, I really love it when you do it gently, or however it is that you communicate. When you do it, when you're talking about your likes, you can do it specifically. When you're talking about your dislikes, be gentle. We're so sensitive with regards to sex because it's taboo, and none of us want to be bad lovers. So when you're saying, I don't like that, I mean, actually, honestly, with Patty, I can be like, oh, I don't like that. And that works for us. But in a lot of relationships, that's too harsh, and people take it personally, and it hurts their feelings. So be sensitive to your partner. I also believe that if you can talk about sex and what you like and what you don't like, and also if you can get into as far as fantasies, I think if you can talk about all that stuff, where your secret, hidden desires, maybe even forbidden desires are in the swing, I think you can talk about anything. Finances doesn't seem that intimidating after you've just told them your weird sexual fantasy about reading textbooks and having a romp in the library. All right, so C, communicate. And the last and final rule, guideline for our playground is twist. And twist simply means if something's not working, switch it up. Just switch it up. This is an experiment. This is a playful, fun thing to try to see if it creates more connection and intimacy in your relationship. It's kind of a chicken or the egg thing. I think in our society, we believe that we have to be very connected and loving, and then that leads to the sex. Well, that could be true. Or it could also be true that if you are engaging in sex with your partner that you're committed to, that can also lead to intimacy and connection. And that's what I've found in my own relationship with Patty, and this is why we never stopped the 30-day challenge. We now both agree to sex anytime either one of us wants it. So shift it up any way you need to. And if after following all these rules it's still not working, and the sex isn't, it's not happening, or there are potentially bigger issues, I can point you to a lot of resources. You might want to do sex therapy. But I think that sex in an intimate relationship is important, and you can read research after research after research about this as an important part of a romantic relationship. And that it's a beautiful part, and it can last for years and years and years, and it gets better the more we age and the longer we've been together. And there's also studies on that. The last study I want to mention, and the last thing I want to say is, so they did an 80-year study, Harvard did, of adult development. And they were specifically trying to find out what made happy, healthy lives. And the one thing that ran through all of this study that could determine longevity and also happiness was a person's close relationships. Their close relationships, even more than money, made them happier, and they also lived longer. So, investing in your relationship, investing in your romantic relationship, investing in this 30-day challenge is well worth it. If it improves your relationship, even if it moves the needle just a little bit, it's still worth the time and the effort to do it. So these are your guidelines. If you have any questions, reach out to me. You can email me. You can Facebook me. Get a hold of me however you need to. And have fun out there. Remember, be honest, brave, gentle, without shame or judgment. Yay! Love to you all.